Right now, inside your kitchen, there's a combination made from a $5 sheet of common household polymer material and a precisely balanced, highly diluted mineral substance from the earth. Most people see nothing more than discarded grocery packaging and ordinary water. Yet together, these simple items contain the exact thermodynamic properties needed to eliminate any justification for spending $5,000 on a central air conditioning replacement. If these inexpensive materials are arranged into a specific geometric structure and positioned correctly within the airflow pathways of a house, they can initiate a powerful endothermic phase transition. The result challenges the entire financial foundation of a cooling industry that profits from keeping consumers unaware of basic thermal science. The worldwide HVAC sector, worth billions of dollars, depends heavily on the public's limited understanding of heat transfer principles. Every summer, when temperatures climb, homeowners are conditioned to believe expensive upgrades are unavoidable. A technician arrives and conducts what appears to be an energy inspection. After examining an existing 3-ton cooling system, they often conclude that the equipment is too small for the building's thermal demands. The proposed solution is usually a financing package for a larger 4-ton variable speed system costing $5,000 or $6,000. The situation is presented as unavoidable. However, according to this argument, the real issue is not a lack of mechanical capacity. Instead, homeowners have been disconnected from one of nature's most effective cooling mechanisms, thermal mass combined with phase change. Understanding how a low-cost household setup can reproduce this effect requires looking at an alleged military cooling strategy developed more than half a century ago. During the late 1960s, at the peak of Cold War tensions, the United States military faced a serious operational challenge in the Mojave Desert. Highly sensitive radar and communication systems generated large amounts of heat. These devices had to function inside uninsulated canvas shelters, while outdoor temperatures frequently exceeded 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Transporting large air conditioning systems to remote forward positions was considered both impractical and inefficient. The generators needed to run compressor-based cooling equipment would consume enormous quantities of fuel and could expose thermal signatures detectable by enemy surveillance satellites. Military engineers needed a solution requiring no electricity, no moving components, and no mechanical compression systems. Rather than constructing larger machines, they turned directly to the laws of thermodynamics. The key concept was latent heat. Most modern residential cooling systems focus on sensible heat removal. They expend significant electrical energy to force cool air into warm spaces, continuously battling heat that radiates through walls and other structural surfaces. This method relies on brute mechanical effort. Latent heat operates differently. It represents the large amount of thermal energy absorbed or released when a material changes physical state. One example is the transition from a solid form into a liquid during melting. When a specially prepared, high-density substance enters a phase transition, the surrounding air is not merely cooled. Instead, the material behaves like a thermal sink, pulling heat from the environment at the molecular scale while maintaining its own temperature until the transition is complete. Military engineers placed carefully engineered phase change compounds inside the intake openings of desert installations. Scorching desert air was directed across these materials. As the compounds melted, large amounts of heat were absorbed from the passing airflow. The result was immediate. Air entering the tent emerged 30 degrees Fahrenheit cooler, all without any electrical power. This concept leads directly to the $5 household method that, according to the claim, the modern HVAC business would prefer people never understand. The phase change substance reportedly used by the military can be recreated with ordinary high-density polyethylene water bottles and sodium chloride. The process begins by dissolving a carefully measured quantity of standard table salt into tap water. The solution is then placed into disposable plastic water bottles and frozen until solid. According to the description, this creates thermal batteries with substantial heat-absorbing capacity. The system is designed as a controlled endothermic storage medium. A question naturally follows. Why introduce sodium chloride at all? Why not simply freeze plain water? Some HVAC technicians who encounter similar setups dismiss them as nothing more than oversized ice packs. The argument presented here is that such a response overlooks the chemistry taking place inside the bottles. Pure water solidifies at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Although melting ice absorbs thermal energy, ordinary ice transitions too quickly and does so at a temperature considered less suitable for extended and regulated cooling. Adding sodium chloride deliberately activates a process known as freezing point depression. Sodium and chloride ions interfere with hydrogen bond formation among water molecules. This changes the structure of the ice crystal lattice itself. As a result, the mixture freezes and later melts at a lower temperature, commonly near 28 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on salt concentration. More importantly, the saline mixture undergoes a slower and more controlled state transition. The enthalpy of fusion is extended. Because of this, the homemade thermal battery continues drawing heat from the surrounding room for a much longer period than ordinary ice. According to the claim, this closely reproduces the thermal behavior of professionally designed phase change materials. To demonstrate the financial comparison between cooling output and cost, the narrative points to a documented example involving a night shift intensive care unit nurse in Phoenix, Arizona. During an extreme July heat dome event, her suburban residence, already carrying a substantial mortgage burden, became intensely overheated. Her aging builder-grade 3-ton air conditioning system operated continuously for 14 hours. Large amounts of peak rate electricity were consumed. Even so, the bedroom temperature would not fall below 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Fatigued and searching for a solution, she contacted a heavily promoted local HVAC company. A technician arrived, conducted a visual examination lasting 10 minutes, and delivered a proposal. He stated that the condenser was fundamentally unable to manage the solar heat load present in Phoenix. The recommendation was complete replacement. An invoice totaling $5,800 was presented for removal of the existing equipment and installation of a high-efficiency 4-ton system. Financing was also offered at a 19% interest rate. Rather than accepting the proposal, the nurse applied the same thermodynamic principles described in the Mojave Desert example. She visited a nearby grocery store. There, she purchased a 24-pack of standard 16-ounce bottled water for $3.49, along with a large, cylindrical container of iodized table salt costing $1.63. Her total investment came to exactly $5.12. She removed a small amount of liquid from every bottle to provide space for expansion during freezing. Next, she added exactly 2 tablespoons of sodium chloride into each container, shook every bottle until the salt fully dissolved, and placed the entire collection into a deep freezer. According to the narrative, the mathematical principles governing the process are straightforward and definitive. The equation describing energy absorbed during the phase transition is presented as voiceover friendly. The total quantity of heat absorbed, represented by Q, is defined as the mass of the frozen saline material multiplied by the latent heat of fusion associated with that substance. 1 kilogram of frozen salt water requires approximately 334 kilojoules of thermal energy to complete the transition from solid form back into liquid form. By freezing 24 bottles, the nurse produced approximately 11 kilograms of phase change material. For the entire collection to melt, the surrounding air inside her home would need to release more than 3,600 kilojoules of heat energy. According to the comparison presented, this level of heat removal is roughly equivalent to operating a dedicated 1-ton mechanical air conditioner at maximum output for more than 1 hour. The difference was significant. The process required no moving mechanical components and no dependence on the electrical grid. Implementation became the final and most important stage. The frozen bottles were not simply placed in the center of the room. Instead, she assembled a basic airflow channel using spare cardboard. The frozen saltwater array was positioned directly in front of the main cold air return vent in her bedroom. A standard low-wattage oscillating floor fan was activated to push room air through the spaces separating the frozen bottles. The outcome appeared immediately. Air at 82 degrees Fahrenheit was forced through the chilled matrix. As the salt water underwent its state transition, thermal energy was extracted from the airflow. The air emerging from the opposite side of the bottle array and entering the occupied area measured an impressive 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Within 45 minutes, the overall temperature of the bedroom dropped to a comfortable 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Her aging 3-ton central cooling unit, previously described as inadequate, finally sensed the lower room temperature and shut down completely. As a result, the continuous electrical consumption stopped. A detailed financial review painted a dramatic contrast. The proposed upgrade carried a price of $5,800. When financed at 19% over 5 years, the total cost expanded to nearly $8,000. That figure did not include future failures involving proprietary digital control boards, components that can cost more than $900 to replace. The homemade saline phase change system, by comparison, required only $5.12. Its operational life depended largely on the condition of the plastic bottles, which could be reused for many years. The setup required no maintenance procedures, no chemical refrigerants, and no reliance on additional energy infrastructure. According to the narrative, widespread adoption of such methods would significantly reduce demand for residential cooling upgrades. The argument presented is that manufacturers and service providers depend on consumers believing that larger and more expensive condenser systems are the only answer to rising temperatures. The industry also depends on continued use of proprietary equipment and the taxed electrical network needed to power it. The claim continues that if homeowners learn to use discarded plastic containers and common mineral compounds to create thermal mass systems similar to those attributed to military engineers in desert environments, demand for emergency HVAC replacement projects could decline dramatically. In this interpretation, the act extends beyond cooling a room. It becomes a challenge to a business model portrayed as profiting from consumer discomfort. The discussion then shifts to another subject. While a homeowner rests in a cooled room, a separate device remains mounted outside the residence. This device is described as a digital smart meter installed by the local utility provider. According to the narrative, the meter functions as more than an efficiency tool. It is characterized as a sophisticated monitoring system used to track usage patterns, categorize consumer behavior, and apply time-of-use pricing structures. The claim states that these systems support financial penalties through automated billing algorithms tied to electricity consumption. The next stage of the discussion promises an examination of engineering documents associated with smart meters and a review of a legal analog shielding method that could allegedly be implemented immediately. If you found this information valuable, share your thoughts, continue the discussion, and stay tuned for the next chapter. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.